Welcome to the Black on Shelf podcast, a podcast championing Black and Brown entrepreneurs on the digital and physical shelves. I'm your host, Tanaj Ferguson. This is Black on Shelf. So it's crazy. We met, how many years ago that might that have been?
Oh man, multiple years. And it's funny because time flies.
2015?
I was gonna say probably at least 4 years ago, and maybe even more.
Yeah. So
Nuts.
I think we could tell the people sort of like how we met, because this is how this moment is happening. I met Myles several years ago before I was going to business school. I am myself an entrepreneur. Myles had been at it for a while because you're 6 years in business now, I believe.
Yeah.
6 years in business now. He was working, still probably working corporate and with his business. And we met at a commercial kitchen that offers a little bit more than a traditional commercial kitchen. They offer some more support. My product got accepted to this accelerator, Union Kitchen, which I believe you still work out of today.
Yeah, I'm still there.
Hope to talk a little bit more about that for the people as well. And I really just wanted to learn more. And of course, as fate would have it, I realized another Black person. I was like, I'm going to ask him for the real, like, what is this experience? What is it like? He knows he's been here for a while already. And that's how we met. And then I realized Myles is awesome. He's doing great things. While we eventually went on different paths, we still stayed in touch, and I, support the business. And I love that this full circle moment has happened where I'm literally seeing the growth of your business. You're now in a number of retailers. I love your story so much. And I really wanted to be one of the first brands. I wanted you to be one of the first people I spoke to for Black on Shelf, because I think your story really is one of the key reasons this podcast exists and why I am so excited to share stories like yours, who you've been at this for a while, slowly gaining momentum, getting your wins, really working on the foundation of your business, doing it super smart. We tend to hear all these great stories about founders who got all this capital and did all these things and never worked and was able to do this full time. And I think your story is so humbling and also so accessible for someone like me who still works, So I would love for you to talk about your background, how you started 8 Miles, and we'll eventually get into some key milestones. But if you could tell us a little bit about your background, I think people will start to, the Black on Shelf fam, I call them the boss fam, will quickly get an appreciation of why we are even talking today and why they need to know Myles Powell. Tell us a little about yourself.
First off, I'm really glad you're doing this. And it's crazy how we connected years ago, and now we're doing it again on this full circle journey. I tell you, it's inspirational to see other folks that look like us doing, just kind of, doing their thing and trying something new, right? It's really, I love to hear about it. I love to support as best I can. As I kind of look back at this whole journey, like kind of where it started, that was like a whole different person, right? So I guess I'll start from the beginning. So I graduated back in 2012.
Yeah.
Had a civil engineering degree, worked my butt off for it. And, obviously my goal is to go out, get my first full-time job, get a paycheck, start my like, adult life, right? I was excited to be independent and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And my second day of my job, I was out in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I sat at my desk and I remember looking at the clock, and the clock said like 9 a.m. And I'm like, wait a minute, I got to do this for 40 years. Like at that moment, I'm like, no. I can't. There's no way I'm doing this my entire life.
Right.
And that was like that seed of all right, what am I going to do? I'd already made plans to go to grad school because I loved business, but I wanted to do something major, right? I wanted to make a name for myself. I wanted to create a business.
Wow.
Just didn't know how to do it yet. And so what I started doing was kind of channeling into my passion, which was cooking. Growing up with people, my family who love to cook, I always love to, first of all, love to eat, but
that part
kind of comes with that. Yeah, and
love to eat, love to cook. Yes.
Yeah, my parents always said, hey, if you love food, you better know how to cook it. So,
Amen.
And so I just started, playing in the kitchen, experimenting, just kind of this, like I said, this is my first time having my own kitchen. So I'm making dishes every night just to explore. And my initial goal was to create a food cookbook.
But one thing, was your mom a chef?
No.
Okay. So you just
No.
knew how to cook. This was like from your family.
Yeah, these are all home chefs. My dad he was a part-time caterer, but that wasn't his full-time job either,
Okay.
And so, and like, just not even just my parents, my uncle, my grandparents, like, everyone cooks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I gotta fall in line here.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to do a cookbook, and I started a food blog. It was called omgyoucancook.com.
I didn't know this part.
Yeah. And like, keep in mind, this is like Instagram had just started. So Instagram's not really a big thing yet. And so the way I need to express my food was primarily through my website.
Yeah.
And I would post a recipe like every week, every other week. And it was really, the whole point of it was to showcase that someone like me, young guy coming out of college with doing engineering stuff, can also cook, right? That was the whole premise. So did that for about a year. Okay. And there's this one moment that like solidified everything. It was a Friday night, and I was looking for recipe contests online that could put my recipes in. I found a competition announcement that said, "Hey, calling all home chefs to this Food Network show. Like, enter your details." I remember I read it, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't know what this is," but I sent a tweet out, and it said, "Hey, I just found this recipe contest. Like, wouldn't it be crazy if I did it?" One of the people that I grew up with, she's family, she responded and she said, "Just do it." Something like that.
Wow.
So the next day I applied, thinking nothing was going to happen. I got a phone call like 2 months later, and there was a casting director, from Cali saying, "Hey, we saw your blog, we saw your application, we want to interview you for this show." So, and I'm still like, all right, I don't know why you want to interview me. I've been cooking for like a couple years. I'm just cooking like, crazy meals. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing. we had this interview. Then they called me back for a second interview. And now I'm starting to think, I'm like, all right, maybe I don't know why they're doing this. And then a couple of months later, I'm actually in a grad school class, get a phone call and a voicemail. And it's like, "Hey, this is so-and-so, this, I don't remember his name, but he's like, "Hey, we like you. We want you on the show. We film in a month." And I'm like, say what? And at that point, they didn't give me any details. They just said, "Hey, it's a TV show. It's about cooking. You know how to cook everything. We'll see you in a few weeks." Mm-hmm. So I spent like 3 to 4 weeks Googling and YouTubing everything I didn't know how to cook, and I had 2 pages worth of this stuff.
Wow.
And so now, I'm nervous because I'm like, what did I get myself into? I end up, I took a train to New York, and they didn't give us any details. So I'm in there like, is this going to be Chopped? Is it going to be America's Worst Cooks? Because if it's America's Worst Cook, I'm good. Like I can hold my own, and I'll probably crush it.
Right.
If it's Chopped, I'm gonna get roasted. There's no way I'm making it on that show. And so we're in New York, and like for 2 to 3 days straight, they just kind of give us the bits and details of what's going to happen. And on the 3rd day, we start filming. By this point, I'm just a nervous wreck.
You still don't know what show you're on.
Nope. Okay. I'm just a pile of nerves because I don't know what I'm like. Why am I here? I don't belong here. Did the show. It was a 30-minute. It was like a thing where you get to cook in 30 minutes and present to the judges. I didn't do well. I got the boot episode 1. But when I came home from that episode, I remember it was around Christmas. I came home and it hit me like, all right, like, I'm doing engineering, but food is kind of where I need to be. Like, this is my industry. And so around that same time, I was already experimenting with a new barbecue sauce just to mess around with. And I sent some samples out to people and they loved it. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna start a company and make barbecue sauce. So, and that was like
started with barbecue and then went to your macaroni and cheese.
Yep. Yeah. Started with barbecue sauce, did that for a couple of years, and then switched to mac and cheese.
So I'm curious, you don't do well in this competition, but you leave inspired somehow. What was going on between that moment of, I'm going on the show, I didn't necessarily get affirmed, but in some way I did because I was there, to I'm then going to do this? What was that delta?
You know what it is? I learned this later in life I realized that I didn't enjoy engineering. like as an occupation, but I love the challenge of it. And the Food Network experience and the thought of starting a business sounded like the craziest challenge.
Yep. I feel you.
And I'm like, all right, this is my next challenge. I'm gonna take this head on. It seems really exciting. Let's do it.
So you tell me you didn't necessarily enjoy engineering, but you did that. You got your MBA, and then you have all these certifications. I pulled you up on LinkedIn. I'm like, this is Black excellence. What is Myles talking about? Lean Six Sigma, yellow belt, lead AP interior design and construction, engineer and training certificate. I mean, well-degreed MBA from Penn State, bachelor's degree from University of Delaware. I'm just saying it's Black excellence right there. So he doesn't love school. Well, he's saying he doesn't love engineering, but he totally committed to it. What was that? Was there pressure from anywhere for you to still sort of hold down this I'm an engineer, kind of be that, and sort of let food, that passion, still kind of be on the sidelines? What was that going on?
Probably because I worked so hard for that 4-year degree, right? I pushed myself in that 4 years to the point like I never worked so at the time. Like it was my biggest challenge, right? Yeah. I got the degree, in my brain, I'm like, this is my life. Like, I got to stick with it. Give me a paycheck. Like this is my road to the top. But like deep down, I know I didn't like it. Like and I found myself always like every position that I took and throughout like the last 10 years in engineering wasn't strictly engineering. It was like mixed with other stuff. I always found myself trying to like throw in some business in there or other stuff like that. And yeah, it was just, the pressure was on me, right? I was always, okay. Like I remember the day that I got my graduate degree, I got the degree in the mail, and like my first thought is, okay, what am I going to do next? Like immediately, okay, am I going to do doctorate? No, that's crazy. I don't got that money. And I'm like, what am I going to do next? Like that's how my brain works now. I don't know how it happened, and it's gotten, I don't know if you're going to call it better or worse, but it's gotten increasingly crazy where like I'm always like, all right, what's next?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is now you're in the CPG industry. There's always a what next. There's innovation. There's making your product better. There's getting into more places, which you totally have done, and we're gonna get into that. Before we do, give us the origin story of 8 Miles. So you told us how you got here, and how do you define sort of like how this brand evolved, how you named it, your first sale. Tell us a little bit about some of those origin journeys, that process. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when I first started the company, like I started to form it, I was in Pennsylvania, and the internet was the internet, right? But the information wasn't as crazy as it is today. But I just remember I just would spend Friday and Saturday nights Googling or like researching how to create a business, like all the necessary steps. At one point, I had a list of names on a napkin of the company names. Wow. And I'd go to a few friends on the weekends and I'd bring the list and be like, hey, what do y'all think of this? Like, give me your thoughts. And I can't specifically remember why I picked 8 Miles. Yeah. But I remember when I heard it, it stuck. And I said, that's the one I want. Because I wanted to create 8 different sauces.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, it's a play on the movie 8 Miles. So all right, that's actually going to be, that's a good fit.
It's your name. So you're a founder.
It's my name.
Namesake. It's got to be good. It's your name exactly. On there. Yeah.
So it all really worked out. But just like that beginning, it was like, it felt like it was a brand new beginning, right? Like I was like, all right, this is exciting. And I was naive. I had no idea what I was doing, right? I was winging it. And like the first thing I would do is I was selling barbecue sauce at like just the people I knew, my network. And, I remember like my first sale, like, oh, this is crazy. Like someone's buying something. Like, oh my God, someone's buying something I made. It's nuts. And it wasn't until I started getting into like the retail side where I was like, oh man, there's a lot I don't know.
What was your first retail sale?
It was a store, it was a butcher shop up in Pennsylvania. My dad actually was going there just to get his stuff, and he told the owner about me. And I never forget, he agreed, and he said, you come up, do a demo, bring your sauces, and we'll sell it while you demo. I was like, cool. Okay. And I sold it to him at a certain price. Mind you, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I sold it to him at the price that I was selling to like, people individually. So he takes the barbecue sauce, and I'm at the table, and one of his associates, like, puts it on the shelf and puts the price tag on it. And it was like $10.99. I'm like, oh my God, why did he do that? The price should be. And but then some lady came up, she tried it, she looked at the bottle and just put it in her basket. I was like, that is nuts.
She's buying a $10.99 hot sauce.
I was like, oh
barbecue
my
sauce.
God.
So did you not believe it? Like, I'm sure you might have never bought that price tag of a barbecue sauce.
No
so
way.
You're like,
what? I was nervous.
Are they crazy?
When they put it on the shelf, I'm like, no one's gonna buy it at that price. But let alone like people were buying it. So I was like, all right, this is pretty cool. But then of course after that I learned more about pricing, just do more research and figured out like wholesale pricing. I didn't know what that was until I started digging into it, and I had to adjust from there.
What's your advice on folks starting? So details like that was your first sale. You sort of had to muscle your way through those details. What I did hear is that you've started super small. That is a part of your story for sure. And saying, let me get one store. Is that still your philosophy around growth? Tell us a little bit about your philosophy on growth and how you started may have influenced or continues to influence how you continue to build.
Yeah. So I think automatically, at least myself, is we want to go big at the gate, right? It's like we want to, I'm sure when I look at my old business plan from 2015, and it was like, it was pretty aggressive, right? Like go national. And I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
And especially with something like this, where it's intense to make product, right? Making product that you're going to, especially food, takes a lot of work, a lot of knowledge and a lot of know-how. Like people, you got to know people too. But I didn't know that in 2015. So I was just thinking like, so my thought was, okay, I got a bottle of barbecue sauce. I got my pricing. I'm going to send it out to these stores. They're going to be like, cool. And then they're going to buy it. That it was so far-fetched from what it actually is.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until, because everyone was, every store that I went to that, that was bigger than one spot told me no. And so every time I got a no, I had to figure out why. And that's how I learned throughout this whole process. Like, I got so many rejections, which, when you're operating small, it's like, it's not a huge deal because it's a learning process.
When you look back to that point though, like you were looking at, you're more successful with smaller stores because they will let you build that relationship. How do you think about e-commerce today? Because now you sort of one click away from your customer. Do you think 2015 Myles would have done e-commerce? Is that like is that a recommendation that you would be giving?
Yeah, it depends on what you're selling. So for me, my bottles were glass, and so shipping glass takes a lot of work just because of wrapping and all that stuff like that. Because I was doing e-commerce for about the first 2 to 3 years of the business, but but it was pretty. It was low, right? I was getting a couple of orders a week, pretty easy to manage. I would just package it myself and send it out USPS. That's how the business started gaining at least any notoriety. I was selling on Etsy. I was selling on my website, and it wasn't a lot, but it was great because with online presence, you can track how people click to your website, and and this is before Prime was the standard, right? Like Amazon Prime was there and everyone used it, but it wasn't like you had to have it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so people were willing to pay $6 for shipping back then.
Yeah. So much has changed since then. Even you were mentioning sort of being able to go straight to the owner or to the store. I do remember being able to go to Whole Foods back in the day and talk to your category buyer. Today, they're nowhere in sight. Nowhere. But back in the day, you could literally bring your product and be like, can you take it? Try it right now. I would take popsicles was my first product, and I would take the popsicles and say, try it. Can you try it now? And let me know. It's so funny how we had all that access then. Things have totally evolved now. We don't have that same access, but the game has changed and we'd have to do things differently today. But that was then you were able to get that direct access on feedback even.
Exactly. I listen to a lot of founder stories, especially some of the ones that are really successful. And a lot of their stories were like coming up in the 90s and early 2000s. And that's exactly right. Like the entry was so much easier, right? Like getting it on the shelves was one conversation. Now it's like, there's so much red tape and it takes a lot of effort to get on the shelf.
To that, I think it would be interesting to hear what your thoughts are on. You were naive at first. You said you didn't know anything about the food industry. Here you are, you have this product. Where do you make it? Who else is involved? talk to us about what you did then and sort of the differences now that you've grown and your product is in some different places with different rules. You're in mass retail now. So talk to us about then, what did you do to get your product out there at your startup phase? And now you're more mature as a startup and really getting that momentum, what you're doing now, because you're more grown. Tell us about that difference and how you handle your product.
I will say, I think being naive comes at levels, right? So like 2016, I was naive about getting into a place like a Whole Foods. Mm-hmm. Now I'm naive about getting into some other locations. Like I'm still learning, right? Yeah. I you know, I don't have it figured out yet. So I'm still learning along the way.
It's constant.
Yeah, definitely. So in the beginning, I was making all my barbecue sauce out of it was a culinary kitchen, maybe 30 minutes from work, and they were charging me by the hour. I would go in there after work, make some sauce, once, twice a week, come home. And over time, that frequency of going to a kitchen increased. Mm-hmm. So between that, I started in 2015 is when the start is, just to give you a kind of a scale of how it increased. Mm-hmm. Typically now I'm in the kitchen 5 to 6 times a week. And, this is mac and cheese now, but I've got a team of me and like three to four other people. And this is actually recent development. Before that team, I was doing it all myself.
I remember, and I'm still trying to figure out how you sleep and everything.
It turned me into a machine because, because I am still working full time. So what I would do is,
you see why he's here? Because we can all learn, like, you are efficient as ever. I'm sure you have these tired moments and days, but you're clearly pushing through, and this is clearly a passion for you.
Yes, if it wasn't, I wouldn't be doing this. There's no way.
Yeah.
Because like my days start at 5 a.m. and then I get home at 10 at night. And it's like, and it's a straight put. My days fly by. Which also means by Friday it's mush up here. Like there's nothing left in the tank. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But it's the moments of like, all right, this is going in the right direction. that keep me going.
Okay. So back then you made it yourself. Recent development, you have a team of 3. When did you bring that team on of 3, and how did you know it was time for them?
Couple of reasons. It was actually a long time coming because I was, when I was doing it mostly 90% myself, I was burning out like, pretty bad. Physically, mentally, I was not doing so hot. And I
understandably,
feel it, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I always knew I wanted to bring in the team, but I was like, I can't afford to pay a lot of people. So you're kind of in that weird position. But, when we got actually accepted to Target, which was late last year, and we were just onboarded with them, I even if I spent all day in the kitchen, I couldn't make that all myself. So I knew.
Wait, still 3 people or 4 technically are making everything for Target.
Yeah.
Out of Union Kitchen. I think that's so inspiring.
It was a wild too. So I had scheduled it for about 3 weeks, probably the most hectic 3 weeks of my entire lifetime. It was like, and Union Kitchen being it's not a conducive space for an order of that size.
Yeah.
And so all of the hoops and hurdles, and like the elevator went down 3 days and the freezer went down. There's all this stuff, all this Murphy's Law was in place. And it was just, and
you're like, I'm going to do this no matter what the heck happens.
Yeah, there's no way I'm going to mess up.
Yeah.
And mind you, this is still considered the second job. So like I'm getting pulled. My brain.
I am mind blown. I've been mind blown. I'm still mind blown. So this is curious. This is interesting. So for the Black on Shelf family, many of us are juggling a full-time job. That's how you pay the bills. We may not have a rich uncle. You may not yet have a grant or some other thing. I think the other thing is these things have become so much more accessible now. Accelerators that are paying and giving you equity-free dollars, more pitch competitions that give you opportunities to do that. There was not as many of those back in 2015, 2013. This is a progressive thing right now,
Agreed.
So I understand why you really did have to make some serious choices, but you were really committed to making that happen. And that's what's so admirable about all this. Not everyone would have survived and continued to get to a point where you could now be in Target because you did stay the course, essentially.
Yeah, it's a long haul. And it's not the case like that for everyone. So to give you a kind of a quick story, so I moved to DC in 2017, I believe. And of course, I'm still working in my engineering job. I got a new job in DC. And this was the first time in my life where I actually hated my job. I mean, I with a passion, right? And this is my almost my third year in business. And I'm starting to be like, okay, I'm in a new city. I got to grow the business. And now, because I hate this job, I'm working these crazy hours, I feel like that job is holding me back. And I made a decision to actually quit. I said, you know what? I'm gonna go 8 miles full time. Wow. There's no promise, right? I don't really know what I'm doing yet, but I'm like, I gotta put time to it. So I quit. I started doing 8 miles full time. But what's funny about that period, that might have lasted only 5 to 6 months because DC is expensive, and I was getting like 3 part-time jobs.
And got just as busy, but maybe you didn't hate it as much.
Exactly. Yeah. But I found myself like lacking direction at that time because I think I was a little torn. I was in a new city. I wanted to explore, and I never had the feeling of being in charge of my own schedule. And I think I took advantage of it, and I probably didn't work as hard as I should have at the time. And plus, there was still so much of a learning curve.
Yeah.
So I took 6 months of learning, and then realized, all right, I got to get back to work. And then when I got back into full-time work, I was even more motivated. Now I had all that experience. I kind of scratched that full-time entrepreneur itch, and I knew what it would take to do that again. And I think that moment, I started pushing harder than ever before.
Talk a little bit more about that. I think that's really interesting. You got a chance to do both for a while. I think at a period of time, like you mentioned, you know, if you're full time, you always be like, what could I do if I did this all day? You got the chance and it didn't go how you thought it may have, where you would be super productive and all that.
Yeah.
You think that was a you thing, or do you think that happens to a lot of people where, you know, maybe you don't have as much direction, you can't get as much done as we think, maybe we overestimate how much we can get done? What was it? And how do you think about that?
I think it's my personality type. I think when I have all the time in the world, I am less productive if I have a little time.
I get that.
Because there's two moments that I stick in my head for this 6 month period. The first being, I remember like the first Monday after I quit.
Yeah.
And I had planned to watch it. I'm going to wake up at 7 a.m. I'm going to make a big breakfast, and then I'm going to get to work. I ate a big breakfast and then took a nap. It was 8:30 in the morning.
That's hilarious. It's like it's the weekend, basically.
Yeah, it was such a weird time. And then I think too, I was focused on the wrong thing because I didn't have any guidance. So I was focused back then on like social media. I would spend hours like developing like a social media calendar, as opposed to really trying to drive sales. You know, it was I wasn't doing the right things during that time period. And you know, if I knew my stuff that I know now back then, it'd been a whole different thing. But I didn't.
Yeah. What would be some key things you would change about that period of time to maximize it? And I think keeping in mind someone who might be in your position or considering it and thinking, okay, if I do a go decision and take time off, how could I make that optimize? And if I don't, what might that look like? So talk to us from sort of those two angles. If you were to go full time, how do you maximize that period of time to get things done? What would be the corrections you would have made?
I tell you, so one thing is really, really, really focusing on sales. Back then, I used to hate sales. I used to hate taking my product into stores and talking to it, because and a lot of people are that way. It's a fear of rejection, right? This is something you created. It's got your name on it. You hate going into a store and getting rejected. So I wouldn't do it a lot.
Yeah.
So I relied on social media, right? And when you're that small, you gotta hit the pavement hard. Like you gotta put yourself out there. I would have done that every day, as opposed to maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks.
Yeah. Has doing it more often kind of ripped the Band-Aid off, and now you're not so worried about rejection because you're like, I just do this often. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah,
definitely. You know, when I do it, I feel more natural now, and because I have more experience doing it, and we've had some success, it helps, right? But if you're new and this is your first time getting it out there, and you don't have like the knowledge, right? I would go into a store and they'd ask me questions, and I just shrug my shoulders. I'm like, I don't know. Right?
Oh yes.
So that's probably the number one thing I would change. And then also start thinking about raising money, because back then it didn't cross my mind at all. Like
Interesting.
crowdfunding.
People today don't have that problem. Everyone thinks about money first, have no business plan.
Exactly. Yeah. I didn't start thinking about that till probably 2018.
Funding.
Yeah. Cause my naive self was like, oh, I'll just make the business will make all the money and it'll just fund itself. That's what I thought.
So to date, have you taken any funding as yet to get to where you are?
Yeah, so we've done 2 crowdfunding campaigns, raised about $45,000 in total. We're actually in the middle of going for big money. I'm looking for angel investment now.
Wow.
Probably closer to $300,000.
Okay.
Just to kind of get up to the next level. Yeah, to scale up a bit.
That's so exciting. So another set of learning to happen, like this whole funding thing. What does it look like? It is the right time now. You know that for sure. So yeah. We met at an accelerator, and I know not everyone might know what that is or why you would go there. Talk about why you went to Union Kitchen Accelerator, or even consider an accelerator in general, and what are some of those benefits for those who are interested?
Yeah, so Union Kitchen actually approached me. This was the end of 2017. At this point, I had just decided to start getting into mac and cheese. Barbecue sauce is still the main thing. But I was starting to get some really good feedback on the mac and cheese, and people were telling me this should be your main product. But I didn't know anything about frozen. At this point, I've had these little mini successes, but mostly been kind of coasting. And I felt I needed some kind of boost. I needed help. So I Union Kitchen approached the business and said, hey, we've got this accelerator program that's going to really help you grow and scale. And at the time, it's exactly what I needed. There was an equity exchange, which I looked at it as, okay, if I don't join, and knowing how things have been tracking so far, the chances of me getting to scale are probably less than if I join the accelerator, and that 10% is going to be worth it, the equity exchange. So I joined, and then immediately started, getting into. It felt like a boost, a shot in the arm, because
accountability, knowledge.
Yeah, knowledge, especially like getting in touch with retailers, like all this stuff I didn't have access to before. And so it really helped, especially in the beginning.
Yeah. And I think access is it's definitely so big. How many other Black people were in that program the same time as you? I'm just curious.
One, there was 2 ladies that they were in the program with me. Was that it? Yeah, I think it was just me and 2 others, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think access is still something we struggle with in the community, getting more Black and brown founders to understand. I think that there's a lot of ideas out there. There's so much great opportunity for us to share products from our heritage or ideas that we have. But access is something that goes in the way. We don't know how to get on shelf. So would you consider, you still get a good amount of help from your accelerator? Is that, what role do they now play? Because I know it's been a while since you were in the core of the program. You're out of the core of the program now.
Right. I think as I started to scale, they've become more of like, a soundboard for me. If I have a question or something like that, they'll chime in. But it's not as intense as it was back then, right? Because back then it was like, and that program has changed over time. It's become a little bit more structured than it used to be. But I think once I started to grow beyond that intro / that first phase, I think they became more of a separate advisory board at this point.
Yeah. How have you found other mentors within this space to really help you feel more comfortable in the uncharted territories, packaging, formulation? I know the accelerator does some of that, but for some of your other mentors, how have you found some of them, and what sort of advice and support do they give you?
Actually, so I have an advisory board now, and it's about 3 gentlemen who have been in the food industry for a long time. And I found them, and it was actually just curated out of one of my high school friend's dad, who is on LinkedIn with me, and kind of followed this whole journey. He reached out and just said, hey, if you ever need help, let me know. So we started chatting, and then we formed this advisory board, which is great, because I think one of the biggest struggles as an entrepreneur, at least for me, is dissecting my own thoughts. Because like I give people the metaphors, like imagine you're working in an office building, and each floor of the office building is a different like department, finance, accounting, sales, marketing, right? But you're the only one in the building, and you're running up all this floor.
Oh yeah.
You're answering all the phone calls.
Tired.
You're tired. Like it gets really stressful, and trying to and it's really hard to. And since your time is limited, right? If you're not amazing at research and finding stuff, like it can get really overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so my advisory board's a lot of help to kind of help me think about things that I'm not thinking about. The overall network of entrepreneurs, because it's growing. And there's a lot of people in the space now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of Facebook groups that I use to kind of get some help with too.
Yeah.
And then just, entrepreneurs that I meet just out and about too, that are willing to offer a couple of pieces of advice here and there.
Yeah. How often do people hit you up within the community, the food community, sort of just get advice? Or do you feel like you're still a little bit hidden, like people don't really know who you are yet? Where are you at with that at this time? I mean, that's about to change with Target, but how's it been so far?
I'm in the middle. Pre-Target launch, I actually offered my services to kind of help out some entrepreneurs. And I got a lot of phone calls to kind of just guide them and think about some of the things that, especially in the beginning, right? Because, like I'm good for that first phase because I've been through it. But once you get to where I'm at and beyond, I'm in their boat. I'm like, hey, what am I not thinking about?
Yeah. I think iron sharpens iron. So it's really great. Do you feel like you have a solid core of other folks at your experience level or sort of like where your business is right now? Is that something you have?
Yeah, because there's so many of them, right? And I it's funny because like when I'm at a store, and I think a lot of people this way, we see a product, we don't think of the person behind the product.
Yeah.
It's not until like I meet someone, they're like, oh, I had this product, and I go, oh man, I've seen that. I've actually bought it or I've seen it. Like, that's you.
Yeah.
And because we all tend to see those products as just some corporate giant, right? Or some company. But no, like, that's a person, or sometimes it's a person.
Yeah. I'm so weird because I am the person who frequents the grocery store weekly. My family, my significant other sort of hates it, right? But I like turn everything around, like, who made this? And I like add this person on Instagram and LinkedIn. Like, I'm thrilled with the story behind. I mean, this is why this podcast exists, because I have always been so excited about like behind the brand. And it's because I do have that look. I understand it takes so much work. So I'm almost like, who is the person? Like, they did this. Like, what? This is amazing. If I see something on Instagram, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. How did they think that how did they know we needed this? Who is this? And so like, I love that I like know who you are, because it makes me appreciate your product so much. And like, when I've recommended your product and they're like, oh my God, this is the best macaroni and cheese I've ever had. I'm like, Myles did that. Like, it is so exciting. It's so exciting.
It's weird thinking about it because I'm in it, I don't look at it from an outside perspective, right? Yeah. Like when I have it on the shelf and I see it, I'm just like, I'm looking at like, okay, like, is it, how many there? Like, how many have been sold today? Like, I'm thinking of the details, not looking at like, oh man, it's on the shelf, Wow.
Yeah. So you're in Whole Foods, you're in some Whole Foods and you're in some Targets. I think I want to get the bigger picture of what you would consider your top 5 milestones in your business. I'm guessing that's one, but you correct us if we're wrong. What would you consider like maybe your top 5 milestones? Like you were excited, you were proud of where you are. Maybe it surprised you.
I think I'm actually working on creating the Target deal as being a milestone, because it was such an intense process that once it got on the shelf, I didn't even realize, I didn't really fully appreciate it. But more and more, I'm looking at it like, okay, wait, this is actually pretty cool.
Listen, like every time I stand in front of one of those coolers and be like, oh my gosh, this thing is in the cool, your macaroni is in the freezer. Never like let that be diminished. That is a huge deal. Huge. Yeah. And for one, like, now that it's not that many Black products on the shelf. Right. Yeah. So we're rapidly increasing our presence. And I think the events of Black Lives Matter in 2020 really helped to propel that. Did you experience any of that? Did you experience any increased interest, new followers?
Yeah.
outreach. Tell us about what that experience was like for you.
Oh, but definitely. I think with, all of 2020 and even extending into 2021 is the appreciation and attention to Black founders.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of retailers are doing the especially in Black History Month, but the focus on Black retail and Black founders. And that's been really helpful too, because it actually connects me with other Black founders that I may not even noticed before. So it kind of works both ways. Definitely saw some more attention. A lot of stores are looking for founders of different diverse backgrounds. So that plays a big part, because, like you said, there's a lot of us, but we don't have the same network as some of our counterparts.
Right. We still have to build that. Yeah.
Exactly. So we're always kind of working a step behind. But it's really encouraging to connect with someone and see their success.
Yeah, we're going to double back to your 5 milestones because we end up building on it, but I still want to hear your 5 milestones. So tell us, continue there.
I think actually my next biggest milestone is going full time again, because I think that's going to really open up a lot of opportunities, and it's going to do something for our mental health.
You ready?
Yeah, it's going to really help me out.
You think you're ready this time? Like, this is the time where you're needing to be full-time, and you think you could really use the opportunity properly, unlike what you mentioned as the last time?
Because now I have a roadmap. Before I was winging it, but now I know what it's going to take from a time perspective, like kind of the goals set in mind if I go full-time. And I think once that opportunity presents itself, I'll be in a lot better position. So that's my next big milestone. And after that is growing outside of the Northeast region, like getting the product to the Midwest, the Southeast. There's a certain stage where the product becomes, I'll call it formidable. It hits the radar, right? Like the masses know about it. That's my and having a team, right? Like having people who are actually on, not just from a production standpoint, but just working
marketing, sales, operations. Yeah, that would be a big deal. Do you think any of those so far that you mentioned as milestones would be like this year type milestones?
Yeah. I mean, right now my plan is to go full time by the end of this year.
Wow. Well, we are rooting you on for that.
Thank you.
That's big. Would those be the main milestones that you are looking forward to?
Yeah. And then also too, I've got another product, which is it's a line of mac and cheese bites.
Innovation?
Yeah, R&D.
Yes.
Which I'm really close. We actually did a pre-release of them, and they did really well. But I didn't have the equipment to scale up.
Okay.
So we had to scale. We had to kind of take them off the shelf and figure that out.
Okay.
But that's going to be huge too, because when they were on the shelves for that 2-3 month period, they sold like crazy.
So you're making me think. That could be great. Who's it targeted for? Are we going to look out for it? Who's it targeted towards, you think?
I mean, it's going to be the same audience as the mac and cheese. So you're looking at moms, especially who want to get something quick for their kids.
Yeah.
Folks like me who just want to snack. It's got a pretty wide audience, and Whole Foods already expressed interest. Target expressed interest. So I know once they hit the market, they'll do really well. It's just getting them to market.
Yeah. One thing I'm curious about is you went the route, as we mentioned, a commercial kitchen. You're making it yourself. Talk to me about when you might go with a co-packer or a contract manufacturer. Are you thinking about that as next steps as well?
ASAP. I gotta. Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta. I tell people, I'm like, hey, my feet hurt. I got to get to a co-packer soon, and I'm working on it. That's actually planned for this year as well, hopefully by the end of this year.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, a contract manufacturer is someone who takes that part of the steps out from you. Like, they make the product. Yes, you collaborate, you tell them what to make, all the ingredients, all that good stuff, but they then make it for you on your behalf. To relieve someone like Myles of having to do it, because he's been doing it for 6+ years here. And for you, the reason you didn't do it at first just was primarily because of cost, right?
Yep, and scale. Like, these co-packers want you to make a lot of products, and if you don't have a lot of customers, you really can't make it happen. And just I'm looking at it even from a time standpoint, because right now it's an hour drive to my kitchen and 30 minutes back without traffic. Being there for 3 to 4 hours, that's 6-7 hours that you could be doing other stuff to build your business as opposed to making the product.
Yeah. That will be really interesting So I would ask, what's the thing that surprised you most about your journey so far?
Oh man, there's been a lot of surprises. I think it's just overall the effort it takes to get into retail.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, like I said, I thought it was fill out an application
Name
online.
some for the people. Let's make sure people don't think it's just I got a product, it's on the shelf. Tell them this exhaustive list.
Yeah, so I'll tell you right off the bat. Target. Now we had an issue of COVID kind of shut things down, right?
But right.
Target. I started talking to Target in December of 2019, and we got on the shelves May of 2021.
Gotta be patient, huh?
Yeah, you gotta be patient. And then Whole Foods, I pitched Whole Foods 3 times before they actually accepted the product. Mm-hmm. So, and that's the other thing too, is that this industry, it's cutthroat and it's ruthless because you've got so many people competing for not that many spots. The grocery store is only so big.
Right.
And I think the other thing is too, is once you get on the shelves, your work is just beginning because you can
say that again.
Once you get on the shelf, that's the beginning of your job.
Bingo.
Your work's just beginning. Mm-hmm. Because I made the mistake of one of my stores and putting it on the shelf. I said, okay, it's good to go. I'll see y'all later.
This was back in the day, naive Myles. He knows better now.
This is 2018 Myles. He knows some stuff, but not a lot. And 6 to 9 months later, they tell me, hey, if you don't improve your sales, we're going to drop you. Still, Myles is going, all right, I'm going to do a demo once a month. That'll help, right? Nope. No. They end up dropping me 2 months later.
Wow.
And so from that point on, I knew how aggressive you had to be with marketing. Because if you put your stuff on the shelf, if no one knows about you, they're not going to pick you up. You could have the best stuff in the world. Mm-hmm. You gotta direct them to it.
Yeah, you got to drive demand. There's this book, If You Build It, Will They Come? And the answer is no, not on their own. You have to drive them to it. So talk about some of the activation, some of the support that you can provide to help someone to come and become more aware of your brand. What does that look like for 8 Miles?
Customer demos are huge because, we need, for food, we have to experience it before we try it, right? Mm-hmm. So, if you're in a frozen food section, you're inundated with products, right? I mean, it could be overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And if you've tried one product, you're gonna probably stick with that product because that's your go-to. And if you're a newcomer and no one's tried it, they're not gonna give you the time of day, unless you have something that's really in high demand and unique. But still, there's a learning curve there too. And so you definitely want to demo as much as you can, and then you want to utilize social media, especially Instagram. But you have to do it in a smart way. You have to build your brand up. You need to define who your target audience is.
Yeah.
And then go after them. I think a lot of people feel like, okay, everyone likes my product, I'm just going to throw it out to the world. No, you have to define the person or the persons who will enjoy it the most and focus on building that community, and then it'll blow up from there.
Yeah, I think all those are really great points. And, you mentioned the customer. I'm a marketer. I now work in grocery retail. Prior to that, I was on the brand side, but in grocery retail, and I work on the own brand. So the grocery store's products, it's just not just because it exists in the grocery store. Even when we own the building, doesn't mean people buy it. Even we have to support our products on the shelf. With a number of points of activation, the circular for a grocery store, digital ads, social media, a lot of the same things you do as a brand, but for way more categories. So I can confirm, even as a retailer, a grocery retailer, we are still marketing to consumers and driving demand, bringing them into the store. They don't just come.
Exactly. And that's another thing too, is I didn't realize how much money people spend on marketing for a CPG brand.
Yep.
Like there's a brand that they do some type of cereal. It's like a heavy protein cereal. Anyway, at some point I was seeing a lot of ads on my Instagram.
Magic Spoon. I know what you're talking about.
Damn. Yeah. And it's funny because I look at the first time I saw the ad, I'm like, I love my Frosted Flakes. I would never switch. I would never try them. But I keep seeing these ads. And I end up finding out that the amount they spent on advertising was like $100,000 a month. And I'm like, oh God. But look, now they're they're a top brand.
They are. That's kind of what you have to do sometimes. Sometimes, I've worked in brands where you will take a loss just to actually gain that momentum, get that first place, get that visibility in the minds of consumers, and then you're able to really work on profitability. But sometimes it's intentionally, we're going to spend the money.
Exactly. And that's a tough pill to swallow because sometimes that money doesn't have any return on it, right? Like you don't really know what's gonna happen with. There's another brand which everyone knows about now, Sauce.
Yeah.
They did the truffle hot sauce. I still remember the first time I saw one of their ads, and I was like, "Wow, I think that's so. What's the word? I mean, that's too much. Like, who wants truffle?" And I remember seeing the glass bottle. And this is at the time when I was still heavy in doing my own barbecue sauce. So I'm looking at.
So you were critical of them. You're like, no.
Yeah, I was like,
and theirs is more than $10.99, by the way. Okay.
That's another crazy part. That's the other thing. And over time, I keep seeing their ads, and I can tell their ads are getting more and more professional. I'm like, man, they must be doing something right. And then, of course, they're in a DJ Khaled video, and I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? And then just recently, now they're on grocery store shelves, and you're right, it's like $12 or $13, but they built a community so successfully that people that love their stuff do not care what it costs.
No.
Yeah.
It's an elevated moment of consumption. We're not just throwing that on some fried chicken. You might, but most people are like, I'm making an elevated dinner and I want this amazing, truffle hot sauce, truffle sauce and everything. So, talking about customers, one of the key reasons you saw it because they have targeted you, right? So when you have thought about how your 8 Mile consumer has evolved, who's it for? Maybe lessons that the shelf has taught you versus what you thought initially. What were some of those insights for you?
Yeah, so I actually learned a pretty great lesson quickly after launching the mac and cheese. So my first packaging, my intention when I had the mac was, okay, I want something that stands out and is different on the shelf. Most of your products have this traditional looking, like the bowl with the product and like traditional lettering and all that stuff. And I was like, I want to be different. So I was like, I want to make my packaging playful. I had like kind of semi-cartoonish lettering, bright colors, and it did stand out on the shelf. The problem was I didn't define my audience correctly.
Okay.
I had thought my audience was going to be people like me, coming out of college that wanted a quick meal, young adults. But because the way my packaging looked like a kid brand. And it didn't match because I was not going after the kids. And so people like me would see it and be like, that looks like kid mac and cheese. I don't want it. So what I ended up doing was I redefined my audience. I kind of rebranded. And I realized that it's actually for moms and their kids. And moms always want they're going to want what's best for their child. And, and so they look at so now I'm a premium mac and cheese. Okay, this is the best I can get.
Premium.
I want that. Premium gourmet stuff.
Yeah.
And then of course with COVID, now you get all these parents and just people in general that are in the kitchen more often. They need some help. That's where we come in. Okay, you can still have this homemade quality meal. It just happens to be frozen.
Yeah, 8 Miles is no Kraft macaroni and cheese. Okay.
Not even close.
No shade on Kraft. It's just no Kraft macaroni and cheese. You know what I'm saying? Go try it for yourself. Cool. Just go try it for yourself, So I know that you did have a rebrand. What went into that? You talked a little bit about how you wanted to shift your appeal. How long did it take you to say, okay, I'm ready to do that and I can afford that? How much time was in between your original packaging and the rebranded one?
I think I was rocking with the original packaging for about a year and a half or so. Okay. And, sales were doing okay, but not where I expected them to be. And then that's when I started digging into why. And that was one of the things I discovered. And actually, I hired a branding agency, which is actually one of the reasons why we raised money already.
Okay.
Because I used to be against it. I'm like, why would I hire someone, pay all this money for them to do something I could probably Google? But it really helped because we were able to walk and, we were able to talk through everything. And really, like, she helped me with my copy, how I discussed the brand, our tagline, all this stuff. And once it was done, I looked at it and said, yeah, this is actually a much better fit. It felt better. And
you were proud of it. Yeah.
I was really proud of it. And then the sales actually were increased as a result. So it was definitely worth it.
So it was communicating what you wanted it to.
Yep.
Yeah. I do love the photography on there. It's very appealing. Yeah.
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 And that's the thing too. Before it was cartoonish looking, and people need to see what they're going to eat. So they see the cartoon, they're like, I don't know what's inside. If you see the picture of our mac and cheese, it's inviting, and it's like, okay, I want that on my plate.
Definitely. All right. So one of the things I want to leave us with or wrap up with, because we've gotten to talk about a lot, and I think this conversation will be very valuable to the Boss Fam. Anyone who's considering starting something, Myles is basically saying, start it. Find something that inspires you and start it. He talked a little bit about navigating corporate and entrepreneurship. You're going to be tired. There's no runaround on that one, right? The jury's is no runaround, right? You're still tired, but you're doing it. So don't let that be a hindrance. I'm curious though, what do you do for your mental health, and what have you done? Yes, muscling it through, but like, what really have you done to sort of still make it through? 6 years is pretty substantial, I want to say.
Yeah. Number one thing is I exercise. It's because within that realm of working out, I can control it, right? There's running the business and everything else. There's so many unknowns and things that impact with your success. In the element of the workout, it's me and the weights.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, and I set a goal, and then I can see the progress. The more it's such a, like, I look at it as like, I put in 100%, I get 100% results. But business is not always that case.
No.
Like, I put in 100%, I get 50, I get 40. Because of just how things work out. And working out is an escape. It just allows me to just focus on non-work related.
Definitely.
And it feels good. So I'm actually trying to incorporate some other ways to kind of get away from the grind, just for a bit, trying to relax a little bit, because like I said, especially toward the end of last year, early this year, the burnout was real.
Did you get a business coach? Have you ever seen like a therapist? Some of those things that are common they're not so common in the Black community, but just curious if you relied on any of them for your support.
I've thought of it. Right now my family is my coach, where it's like, whenever something is really bugging me, I talk to them about it. And actually for me, it's my whiteboard, which like I need it. I realized writing stuff down for me is really relieving, because
that's therapy right there.
Yeah, definitely. I spend so much time driving, and that's when I have all my thoughts, and I get tangled and I get frustrated when I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And so getting a chance to write it down really helps.
Yeah. You mentioned your family. So not everyone has a great support system, but how has your family supported this dream, this vision, just you in general, your well-being, encouragement? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think because they're entrepreneurs too. Like my dad, part-time caterer. My grandpa actually owned a company all his life, and so they know from the very beginning. They were 100% in, and they don't know the food industry from a CPG standpoint, but they know kind of what it takes to really push through, and they have a lot of confidence. And I think that is really encouraging, because there's been some times where I was down, where I'm just like, oh my God. But it's weird. I never thought about quitting. It was just, I was lost, where I'm like, wow, what am I doing wrong? But they always encourage me to just like, okay, it's a setback, but you'll get through it, learn from it. My girlfriend's the same way, where she's like, she sees it every day. She's like, this dude is killing himself, but she's still in a position to encourage me, especially when I need it. And like I said before, it's these like the wins that are embedded within everything else that kind of keep me going.
Yeah.
Like that moment of like, okay, I have these blissful moments, and they're short-lived, but it's like maybe a day where I'm like, things are under control.
Yeah.
I can breathe, and like, all right, that's the next step here.
Yeah, no, I feel you in that. It's good to have some of those days that sort of make you feel like you're right on track and you have it under control. They are short-lived, but it's nice to have some of them every now and then.
Exactly.
Boost your confidence a little bit.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to talk about is, what does being Black on shelf mean to you?
It's actually it's a privilege in terms of like, I'm very proud to be able to showcase myself as a Black entrepreneur, just a Black person that shows a certain level of determination and grit. Sometimes I look at that shelf, and everyone on that shelf I'm the only Black person on that show, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my goal is to just have someone else who maybe is in the 2014 8 Mile shoes sees that and is inspired and says, okay, I'm going to do that too. You know, I want to provide as much knowledge, as much encouragement, as much motivation as I can to people who are looking to do the same thing. Because there's people that are doing better than I am that are also Black, but I look to them like, okay, you're crushing it. I want to be just like you. You know, like I want to, and that's motivation too. Like, okay, yeah. Like it's a team of us that are doing it. And because like sometimes we're not amplified as much, right? Like there's a lot of people that are doing really well, but no one knows about it.
And that's why Black on Shelf exists. I needed to tell these stories. I'm like, are you like a hidden gem or something? Like, I'm happy that I'm able to do this, but I'm also like, wait, where do they not see he's the only Black person in this category? Like, we're in Target. What? Wait on it. It's coming. You're about to be flooded. We're the first, you know, just saying.
There's a couple companies out there that are doing really well. There's actually one in particular that I met early on.
Really?
I'm guessing she does it. DC sweet potato cake. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
No.
But before Union Kitchen, I was at Mess Hall, and I never met her in person, but I always saw her team. They were making cakes every day, and she actually had a lot of success. She ended up, she sells through Starbucks, I think locally.
That's big.
I think she landed a deal with Walmart, and like this is back when I was still trying to ramp up. And I'm looking at her like, okay, like that right there is how I want to do it. So we're out there. It's just sometimes we don't have the same voice.
Yeah, well, we're changing that. It was such a pleasure having you come on. We're super rooting for you. Like, I'm just so proud that you are on the shelf and that it's really just the beginning, you know, of what you're going to do. You have innovation coming. We're going to be supporting really hard. Is there anything that you'd like to share with this community? Anything on your mind about encouragement or news that's coming up? And then we'll follow up with how folks can find you. And of course, we will include everything you mentioned in the show notes.
Yeah, I would say, and you already mentioned it, is that don't hesitate to start, right? Start planning, start figuring out how you're going to do it, and don't be afraid of the setbacks, because unfortunately, with this kind of thing, no matter how much you plan, there are going to be setbacks, but you got to push through them. And use your network to the best you can. Ask as many questions as you can, and also be a little bold. Don't be afraid to really put yourself out there. And because I know a lot of companies that are like they're new, but they're kind of afraid to express their idea because they don't want that negative feedback, especially with the internet and how it is nowadays, right? It's like it's a war zone sometimes. So
yeah.
I just tell them, listen, like, most of the companies that have made it that you hear about the success story, they had a long, like, bumpy road to get there. So keep at it, and just like believe in what you're going to do. Yeah.
How can everyone follow you and support the brand?
Yeah. So we're 8miles.com at the website. So 8 and then MYLES. And then on Instagram, we're at 8miles LLC.
Awesome. Well, I will keep the community very much aware of what is going on. This is about Black and Brown founders. So they're going to hear about you. And as you expand, we will let folks know what new cities they can purchase in. We're so excited for you, Myles. Your story continues to be inspiring. You are a hard worker, like no cap. You are a hard worker. And whenever I am tired, I'm going to be like, Myles would still be working, just as an inspiration point. We should all rest and everything too, but there is a point where you do have to do what you did to get to where you are now. And that's super inspiring. I'm so excited we got to talk. Thank you for joining.
For sure. I really appreciate it. This has been great.
Awesome.